Welcome back to True Story with John Gibson. Today's guest is a commentator, an analyst, a musician, a retired fighter, super dynamic man, Robin Black.
Dude, how are you, man?
I'm great, man. Thank you again so much for joining me.
No, it was fun. We're gonna hang out. We're gonna chat. We're gonna talk about all kinds of stuff, and it's cool. Like these days, you can chat with people, catch up with people, make new friends, like think out loud. It's been there's been long periods of time where we're all alone. So the fact that we can just hang out and chat is a pretty cool thing. It's pretty, that didn't exist 5 years ago, really. Not like this.
Not at all. And it's made our world, and for the better in some ways, a lot smaller. Just like just allowing conversations like this to take place. And I feel so fortunate, to be able to do it, to really reach out to people, really without kissing ass, just like yourself, people that inspire me or that intrigue me, and it is a really cool opportunity. And I do appreciate it for sure.
Yeah, it's a wild thing. It's a wild thing, man. And we're going to chat. We could chat for minutes, hours. We chat again tomorrow, in a month. We could be friends for life. You live in Chicago and I live in Toronto. Like, it's just it's a cool thing, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. To that end, I feel like for sure you and I we're members of a like community. And in that, I'll just say martial arts. I'll say music as well. I love music and I've played music in different instruments my whole life and stuff. So I know we definitely share a couple common passions, but your mind, man, intrigues me. And before I just start peppering you with crazy questions, I want to actually pay you a very sincere compliment. And I thought about this, so it may come out corny, but I really did think about this and how I wanted to try my best to articulate to you. And I just want to kind of say, man, kind of thank you. You've really made me a better martial artist. I have my coaches, right, who are my real influences and open those doors to me. But I want to be really, really sincere in this. And I know that I can't be alone in that, the way you have broken down fights, and I mean all sorts of fights in martial arts, not maybe MMA, but John Wayne Park things, all these different sort of things. The things you've been able to notice and articulate in a manner that me, a simpleton, can understand has made me a better martial artist. And then I looked for those things and these patterns and stuff. So man, I actually want to pay you a huge compliment and just say I appreciate your mind and I can't wait to kind of learn how this thing works a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you. It's that I get people give me, that's a nice compliment. And I get compliments from people. And the ones that kind of mean the most are when people talk about some people will literally be like, yeah, it wasn't interesting. And then all of a sudden you made me want to study martial arts or, the greatest thing in the world is art. And I think moving your body. Mm-hmm. And I think, there are a lot of ways to do that. Gymnastics, when I was a kid, I was a gymnast. I was a diver, 1 meter, 3 meter and platform diver and a climber. But, dance, I wasn't a dancer, but dance, there's all of these ways that we can express art. Mm-hmm. And art has movement, feeling, essence, biology, physiology, physics, texture, sound, color, it has all of these things. And then when you add your body to it, now you are art, sure. And I think when fighting at its highest level, I think is some of the highest, level of art that we can make as humans, because we're now taking the art of it, the rhythm of it, the music of it, and then adding competition, and then you're adding fear and anxiety, and two human bodies together are with conflicting objectives are creating something in a dynamic. And it's so the reason that why I'll keep driving to do this more and more and more and never get tired of it ever is that it is so unbelievably highly complex.
Yes.
And then at the same time, really simple. Punch that man. Run away. Cover your head. It is simple and complicated, like all the best things in the world.
Right.
And I think for, when you give me a compliment like that, and when people say that they like the way that I examine this stuff, I find it somewhat easy in a sense to do this the way I do it right now. Yeah. One, it's natural. This is now what I want to do. I see humans move, I see animals move, and I need to figure it out. But I think the way that this is being done, things like this are being done, are so incredibly rudimentary, not because anybody's dumb or you know, this is not, it's because of the nature of television, of sport, of live environments, of production, all of these things. We have taken this beautifully complex thing, and television in general does this with news and entertainment and stuff, taking this incredibly complex thing, and we've tried to claim it to be incredibly simple. Right. And so if you do anything other than that, you're different. And so being different now is just, to me, is just not doing what everybody's doing. Right. And when you do that, when you say, I'm not just going to do it the way I see it all the time, it opens up every possibility. You can examine it in any way that you want.
Yeah. Has that been, well, let me ask, you know, and I mean this not to be negative at all, not in a pejorative way, but as you see the sport expand and, you know, these big networks and all these different, now there's a lot of talking heads, I guess is what I'm trying to say, yeah. Right? A lot of analysts, I'll put quotation marks around that. You know, very few, I think there's, you know, they're few and far apart between like actual experts, subject matter experts and analysts. I don't know. Right. Yeah. But, you know, what's your perception of that? Like, do you hear people and just go, oh, I can't listen to this person?
Yeah. Well, I actually turn it all off. It's a key. It's very important for me to do it. And not because of any of the individuals, like almost all. So today you can literally, and it is done, just grab any famous fighter, sportsman, sportswoman, and just put them in the seat and put the headset on them and know that they're going to be able to do the role as we all see it.
Right.
You know, we're here in this famous arena, home of so-and-so tonight. We've got two epic warriors. In the main event, we've got a middleweight legend defending his title possibly for the last time against this young up-and-comer. If he can keep it standing, but this guy gets in, uses that NCAA wrestling, takes it to the ground, dishes out a little bit of ground and pound. We could see this one end early. Guys, it's going to be fireworks. Right. You can get anyone to do that. Like, of course you can get anyone to do that, right? Like you can, we can grab any, and here's the thing. When they do that, they're not doing anything wrong. I don't want to criticize when we pluck out a high-level martial artist and plop them in that chair. They are doing what they believe they are expected to do. Sure. They're not being, they believe the role is exactly what I said there. You know, if this guy keeps us standing, this guy's, you know, use a lot of those calf kicks, try to close the distance, get some volume on the man, push him up against the fence, and then force him to defend the takedowns. And when he does, you can fatigue him just enough. Come on, in the later rounds, we're going to see a new champion. Anybody can fucking do that, right? And the issue is they think that's what's wanted of them. It also isn't their calling. Their calling is fighting or running a gym or, and there's a million things. Right. Doing this, they'll just go in and emulate the role as they see it. Right. And that thing is ultra easy to do. And here's the thing with narratives. So we take away from fighting, which we love. And again, I'm not trying to criticize any fighter. I'm going to work fights this weekend. There will be a number of fighters and coaches that plop them in. I'm not trying to knock them. They will do that. Yes. Everything I just said, because that's what they believe the role is. And there's a very large amount of the audience that want that role. As children, when we saw Barney the dinosaur, he did the same things over and over, and we kind of liked it. You know, hey, that's a low kick. He called that a low kick. It's a beautiful low kick. It's a big right hand. Oh my God, takes him down, dishes out some ground and pound. It's all over. We recognize it. It feels familiar. So that job is very easy to do, and anybody can do it. But it also is very compelling. Narratives dominate our thinking. Sure. And this is an issue that if you watch only MSNBC or only Fox News or only the UFC or only the NFL or only hockey, I live in Canada, you live in Chicago, hockey's a thing. All hockey players speak the same. Right. You know, you got to go in there. You got to put a lot of pressure on this team. You know, no I and team get a lot of pucks on the net. You know, you never underestimate the lesser lights in the National Hockey League. You know, like whatever, right? Perfect, and they all say it, and the audience all says it. Yeah. Because narratives dominate our thinking. Yes. We're humans. So I have to turn all that off because there's nothing wrong with any of that, but it is narrative driven. And if I watch it, if you just grab any kid, any fighter, anyone, and you turn the TV on and say, do the thing, they'll be like, oh, big right hand, beautiful low kick. Oh, look at the way he's managing that distance. Got him on the back foot. They're just saying all the things they heard, right? And if you don't turn it off, it will dominate your thinking and you will think that way. And that's the fascinating part about art is literally, and I've had this conversation with many people in this kind of area where, I worked with a guy once and the guy went to the ground and he said, Robin, talk about how much harder it is to grapple when the guy gets sweaty. And I thought, of all the things we could possibly talk about, why are we talking about this? Because Joe talks about this, right? We're emulating Joe Rogan because he's the best who's ever done it, created a narrative, we follow it. And I thought to myself, and I said it to a friend, I was like, and I just thought, we don't have to do that. And my friend said, yeah, but what if there's a new viewer and they don't know about that? It's like, well, they also don't know about the 1900 other things we could discuss.
Risk control or whatever, yeah.
We could discuss how they feel, fear, anxiety, where the feet go, where this position came from, what the history of the guard is, what the guard means, what happens when your lungs are full of hot air, what happens when there's blood in your eye, or how cortisol goes into like there's anything on earth we could discuss. And if you just don't do the thing everybody does, you then go, well, now what? And that's the beginning of great art.
I love it.
Great art starts by saying, don't just play the G chord. And then you go, well, what should I play?
Yeah.
Well, I can play something. And so I turn it all off, and not out of disrespect. In fact, I have extreme respect for all of these men and women, but they are emulating a role. And the root of the job, if you think you have a role and the role is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you will of course do that. If you pause for a minute and go, wait a second, what was the objective? Oh, the objective was to enrich the experience for the viewer. Right. To take this art or music or fighting or whatever and add something to in some way challenge or illuminate or give them feelings of aha or whatever, but we could do any of those things. The job is not beautiful low kick, big right hand. The job is how could you bring value to your voice somehow being placed as a tiny ingredient in this beautiful moment of combat. And so yes, I turn it all off, and I have for years, and I turn on music, often classical music, but I've tried. Wow. Yeah, loud classical is my favorite, but I'll play heavy metal, I'll play punk rock, I'll play slow music, I'll play folk, I'll play bluegrass, and I'll play any kind of music, and it changes the flavor of it. And at first you will do that. Oh, nice low kick. Great distance management. Look at the precision and power. Like you'll just do the things. Right? Those are the things. And if you do that, and when the fighters do that, at the end, the producers come in, great show, guys. Great job, everybody. They pack everything up and they go on to next week, and nothing has ever changed. And then you end up with a commodified product, commodified sound, a commodified, everybody's playing the same three notes. It's like in the 80s when hair metal was a big thing, everybody just played C, G, and D fucking all day long, right? It's the same.
We're gonna get there too, for sure.
Yeah.
We're gonna get some 80s music for
sure. But these are the things, this shit matters to me. Like I didn't start to get into this so I could say knockout power in both hands, striker versus grappler in a stylistic matchup. I got into this because I was like, this is the most curious thing in the world. It's very misunderstood by all, including myself. And we need to, if we figure out what it really is, and we find the language with which we can show people this, I think we can show them some of the most beautiful and mystifying and inspiring things that humans can do. And that's what my mission is.
Another thing that I really love about you, and you can kind of expand on this because I did a little research, but I'd love to learn more. But again, it has to play a part in your analysis too. You're an ex-fighter, so you've obviously trained, and from what I ascertained, there was like some taekwondo and BJJ, of course, and I've seen some of your submissions in your fights. Like you got some BJJ skills, man, and it makes sense.
I got a purple belt.
There it is, bro. But it's real, man. I saw like a Kimura in one fight. It was sweet, man. But I say all that to say, like, and of course it makes sense that you want to have an understanding of these techniques on an actual physical level too in your analysis work, but you also have that extra element, man. You are gifted too, and the way all this combination it comes together. So like with that, I mean, what part would you say your personal journey, like actually being a martial artist, has contributed to that?
So I was a martial artist when I was a kid. And like I said, I was a gymnast and a diver and a martial artist. But martial arts was what I loved. Taekwondo was what I did first. I was a black belt. I can't even remember, but like as a young teenager. And I competed in Taekwondo and sort of a semi-contact, which was really a full contact style of sort of mixed striking, karate, Taekwondo. There was, I studied Sikaran, which is a Filipino kicking art that was modified from sort of the physical kicking aspects of harness. Like, I've trained Savat. I'm a generalist.
Yeah.
So I'm a second degree black belt in Taekwondo. I'm a purple belt in Jiu-Jitsu. I've been belted and promoted in Muay Thai and different things, but I'm a generalist. I love martial arts. And as far as fighting, you can play the role of an analyst or commentator without it, because we just talked about that role. That role can be emulated, but you cannot actually understand. You can talk about it, you can interview people, you can try to dig, but 95, some astronomical percent of the information about fighting is only available within the experience. And if I grab a 1,000 fighters with 8, 10 fights, 20, 30, 50, but 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 950, 983 will say, yes, that's true. Nothing about fighting is how I thought it was before I fought. In fact, it was shocking how different, and almost nobody has ever fought and said, well, that's exactly what I thought it would be like. What they say is, holy shit, that was nothing like I thought. Because it's processed through the perspective of our life. And the moments of us living there, and our physiology, and testosterone and cortisol and oxygenated hemoglobin and pressure and stress and fear and anxiety and all of these things. They're not incidental. They are the experience. You cannot throw that feeling that your hands have no strength in them in the moments before the fight. And I remember in my sixth fight saying that to Joe Dirksen, who was on his 68th or 70th fight. And I was like, man, I feel like I just have no power in my hands. And he's like, me too, man, but it's like my 70th fight. It's normal, right? You have to do that. Otherwise, you don't really know anything about fighting. You really don't. It's nothing like you imagine it is. And some people now, like I said, you grab 1,000 people who had fought, and 993 of them, there was some variation in how people interpret life in the world, but almost all of them will say that. If you grab 1,000 people who've never fought, 600 will be like, no, I think I understand it. And, exactly. Like, nobody who fought thinks that, but many people who've never fought in their life will argue that with
It's amazing. I know.
Yeah, it really is wild. But they don't know what they don't know. It's not their fault. It's impossible to know, right? It would be like, have you ever taken mushrooms?
No. But,
certain hallucinogens, the experience of taking them is so completely different than you think. It is impossible to imagine being on mushrooms. Like, it's just not possible. You don't have the experience. You think you do, or you watch movies and people have trails behind their hands, but it's just not like that. And it's because it's an altered state. And fighting, never mind kicks and punches and distance management and takedown defense, any of these narratives, fighting takes place in a physiologically altered state. Biochemically altered state, something we don't get to talk about much. And when someone like me says that, people think it's crazy because they don't hear it all the time, even though if you sat down with most fighters and you talk to them about how the body works and how hormones work and how neurotransmitters work, and they'd be like, oh yeah, well, I've had that experience. Yeah, it's so different. It's like tunnel. Some will say it's like tunnel vision. Some will say they can't hear anything. Some will say they can hear everything. Some will say time speeds up. Some will say it slows down. But we sort of gloss over all of that when we're actually talking about it, even though that's some of the most meaningful stuff about fighting. So you have to fight to know that. So I thought I would fight once or twice. I ended up having 9 pro fights. I had some kickboxing fights. I had 50 or 80 jiu-jitsu contests. I got bronze at Pan Ams, and I won NAGA Worlds in my category. But you have to fight. Otherwise, you are emulating people who analyze fighting good enough to do the role. When somebody, let's say I just watched Daniel Cormier or Dominic Cruz or somebody very smart, and I saw kicking, and then they were talking about kicking, and I saw timing. I'm like, hey, wait, I understand timing. What I'm not hearing is all of the information that exists in their minds outside of what is being said.
Correct.
So I cannot hear what they don't say. Right. But 99% of the important information is what they are not saying. Right? It's just floating in their consciousness. It's in their awareness. It's in their skin and in their blood. Right. So you can't do it without doing that. And I'm driven by curiosity. So I wanted to fight to understand it. I fought. I didn't understand it. I fought again. I really didn't understand it. I won, but I didn't understand it. And I won again. And now I sort of was able to have that experience where I could hear things and I could actually think. And then I had another fight where I couldn't. And then later, and there were 2, 3, 4 of them where I actually found the experience, that true flow state when you're fighting with another person, and you are both. Bruce Lee called it choiceless awareness, where the choice, you're almost watching yourself make the right decisions.
Yeah, that's like the perfect nirvana, right?
Yeah, it's so fucking sweet. And you can live other parts of your life that way. A lot of people think a lot, and it's something we should do, but I'm doing it right this minute. I'm doing the opposite of it right this minute. I'm stopping to think about what I'm saying. Whereas when you're not doing that and you're just speaking honestly and truthfully and expressing yourself, that's choiceless awareness. You can do it walking down the street, knowing you're making the correct decisions without having to weigh everything. It's an incredible way to live. And you can't live that way all the time. It's an incredible way to fight. You can find it in fighting and climbing and playing music and fucking jazz. And there are ways to find this and cultivate it. So I had to find that. And then the biggest things for me about the path of it now, I think, is first consuming as many different kinds of martial arts as possible. And I had the good fortune, I was in Russia. I commentated like 18 different martial arts over 13 days at the World Combat Games. Sumo, like sumo and sambo and wrestling and Greco wrestling, freestyle, belt wrestling, this historic belt wrestling from Eastern Europe, Savat, Muay Thai, kickboxing, different forms of the same thing with different rules and different paradigms and different parameters. And sometimes I would do 3 and 4 and 5 of them a day. I was the only color commentator, 3 play-by-play man, and I would just hop from one to the other. Sometimes 2-minute rounds, sometimes 4-minute rounds, sometimes kicks, sometimes no kicks, sometimes throws, no knees but elbows, like pancration, all of it. And when I came back from that, I understood it all different. I saw everything different. Wushu, I also went and commentated the World Sanda Championships, which is a kung fu rooted full contact thing. Those types of things made me view it all very different. And especially now I'm making my living and finding my joy where MMA is 50 or 60% of my job. At one time it was 80 or 90 or 95. But even that, I started to view that very, very different. There's all these belief systems and doctrines and dogma that we believe about how one should fight in mixed martial arts, much of which will be disproven or change or will be true today and untrue in a year. It's just the nature of how martial arts changes. And then as far as doing my job, I started to, as I really went along, I started to study what it is to do it in a meaningful way. So I studied freestyle rappers. I studied how jazz soloists and jazz improv musicians, how they prepare to do that in a way that works. So I don't have to just say the things, I can allow myself to say them. And that's all been purposefully cultivated over time. And then now I get to do it this way. And I hope I'll do it very different in 5 or 10 years again. Maybe more simple or more complicated or a bit of both. You know, very look at the small and look at the big and look at the small. But yeah, I mean, I dig it. It's a brilliant thing to be able to do something you are so passionate about and continue to figure out how to do it in different and better ways.
Well, you're constantly improving, and you've one thing that you've mentioned a couple of times, and I love it. It's so important. You know, you have a common theme in that, you know, hey, in 5 years this is going to be different. You know, this is going to continue to evolve, and this is going to continue to evolve, and that mentality is actually, while I agree with it, it's awesome. It's the way to be thinking for sure. It's a little counterintuitive to traditional martial arts. That was like, no, this is it. This is it for hundreds of thousands of generations. We don't change anything. So I love that, you know, and I think it's also important that you have influences from all over the world. So why wouldn't you think that?
You make it a very interesting point. And I feel like there are so many times, you know, I'm not in the tiniest way comparing myself, but to anybody. But when you look at the path that some people have taken, that have gone much further into this study and research than myself, you start to look at their path and find yourself walking along and discovering very similar things. So Bruce Lee, for example, was an innovator still to this day, of course, and he went and along the path, he got to the point where he recognized that these 100-year, 200-year, 1,000-year-old systems were trapped, and that the answer to fighting does not sit in, you know, always do this and never do this. That is just always and never should rarely be said. And even if it is true, like there's almost no absolutes. There are universal truths. Gravity's real. The human mind needs oxygen or it will be unconscious. If you take trauma to the head, you know, and you lose your consciousness, you cannot fight. Limbs do not hyperextend in certain ways or they will break. Like there are certain truths, you know, if the liver is struck and your diaphragm empties and you can't breathe, you can't stand. There are these universal truths, but almost everything else is fluid. Always keep your take the simplest ideas. Always keep your hands up. Horseshit, right? Absolute horseshit. Got my hands up. If I were to drop this hand, why would that be bad? Because you punch me. Right. What if I wanted you to throw a punch at me? Drop my hand. So always keep your hands up is horseshit. But then people would be like, well, always keep your hands up except when you're trying to bait. Well, that's not true either, because I might put my hands down when I'm trying to undermine your confidence. I might put my hands down to deceive you into thinking where I am. And there's 1,000 reasons I would put my hands down. So always put your hands up is not true, right? Never move into the power hand. Absolute horseshit. Literally, I can only move one direction. All night. You're gonna circle the whole fight? All night, I'm going to circle that way. And while we're at it, always keep your front leg on the outside of Southpaw versus Orthodox. Same thing. I'm only going to move that way. Absolute horseshit, right? Almost all of these things that almost all of these things that we say are just untrue. Even things that are true briefly become later untrue and then later true again. I'm in your guard. I will take my hands, put my forearms into your collarbone and pry up on the back of your head and you will open your guard. Great, we'll call it the can opener. It works. Then slowly you swivel and attack my arm. And we go, wait a second, you can't do can openers. You can get armbarred. So we stop doing can openers. And then George, and nobody does them for 8 years. And then George St. Pierre is fighting Carlos Condit. He fucking uses the can opener. Wait, he's using the can opener. Why isn't he getting armbarred? Because the answer isn't something works and there's a counter to it, so never do it again. It's something works, there's a counter to it. Either penalize that counter or stop it. So he just put his hips into such a position that you couldn't be armbarred. Goes back to the can opener. When I was first, and how long have you been doing jiu-jitsu?
Going on 3 years.
Yeah. So when some of the brown belts around your academy were training, they were literally told, and this was just predates me. I was doing jiu-jitsu around 2006. And right around that time, there was still some discussion. You can't do a guillotine with the arm in.
Really?
Yep, that was a thing. That was really a thing,
Wow.
right? Never cross your feet when you're doing an armbar. That was a thing.
Yeah, I've heard that.
It was yeah. I'll show you thousands of examples in real fights, jiu-jitsu, the highest level black belts. There's lots of reasons. Sure. All of these things, happen, become disproved. Don't put too much weight on your front leg or it'll get kicked. Well, okay, then I'll draw your kick and I'll punch you, right? Nate Diaz didn't do that on the weekend, but that I could use that as a tool to make you kick me. Now I know what you're doing and I punch you. Yeah. Even the calf kick thing. The calf kick
now.
Yeah. So
talk about that calf kick.
Very, very temporary thing. And you know who's not talking about it? Anybody who's been doing martial arts for a long, long time. So because everybody's seen the calf kick since time began. In fact, 600 years, at hundreds of years anyways, people have been having organized Muay Thai competition, hundreds of years. Right. There's an argument that Let Wei and Kun Khmer, which are from the region, Let Wei is from Myanmar and Kun Khmer is from Cambodia, that they're part of the same tree. They argue that people have been doing that for 1,000 years. In Myanmar, they're like Let Wei, which is Muay Thai plus
really rough, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I've gone to Myanmar to commentate it, like in a stadium in Myanmar. It was amazing. They argue that it's been happening for 1,000 years, and there's paintings. There's like paintings in sort of cave style paintings of people doing Let Wei that date back further than that. Wow. So people have been doing this for a long time. Let's say 80 years ago, we start spamming each other with calf kicks. Well, what happens is we start breaking our leg, right? It's very common. Chris was not a random thing. In fact, within a couple of weeks of that, on a smaller show, the same thing happened. You don't hear that a lot, but that's a common thing. Common. 3 weeks before that, if you ask Valentina Shevchenko, I saw an interview of someone did with her. I don't know who, but if anybody's watching this and they know, please link it for us. Yeah, we'll see. Somebody asked her about calf kicks, and she's like, calf kicks are very dangerous for the kicker. They're very, very dangerous. They're popular now, but anyone who's been around for a long time, knows they're just dangerous. I don't do them a lot. And people were surprised because they're not new to her, right? She's had probably 100 full contact between Muay Thai, kickboxing, karate, all in her life. She's seen this story before. Why do you think it doesn't happen in Muay Thai? Not because they never thought of it, right? It's because 80 years ago, when this started to happen, and I'm not being facetious, if I'm 16 years old and I break my leg in half, members of my family could starve to death.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like we're not every weekend. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like literally we could lose my grandfather because my leg broke in half, because I'm throwing stupid kicks, because it went through a period for 6 years or 7 years where everyone gets into it and suddenly you realize, wait a second, it's very easy to hit it against the bone. It's very easy to turn my foot in such a way to break your leg. It's very common. So that's why they don't do it in Thailand, is because they know it's too dangerous. Yeah. My grandfather will starve if I break my leg, which could happen if I throw these stupid calf kicks. So people stop doing them. And we don't have to look at, like, I could act like I'm saying that I could predict that you're going to see a whole shitload of people getting knocked out throwing a calf kick with an overhead right or a stretching right. But no, I'd be lying. It's already happening. We can go to, I think it was, pretty sure, there's lots of examples, but one that comes to mind, Jan Blachowicz, Tapology. I like Tapology as yeah, I don't know why, but there's something about it really. Pretty sure it was Corey Anderson. Yes, Corey Anderson, 3 minutes of round one. It says win right hook. I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong. Like, I would see thousands of fights, very good chance I'm wrong. that Corey throws a calf kick and he just fucking binked him. And because when you throw a calf kick, it at first anything new. So why, when I throw a jab at you at anybody good, it's very hard to hit them, because all of the pattern of what my body does when a jab is thrown is now imprinted in their minds because they see it so often, and the average person can't describe what it is they saw, but they knew it was a jab and they didn't get hit. Same way on a higher level, think about this. We take 100 fastball hitters, and you know that ball, if you and I do it, it just goes by, nothing.
Right.
But somehow they not only hit it, but they know what pitch it is before it's thrown. What's happening? Their brain, their nervous system is identifying a particular movement pattern or distribution of the body in such a way that it knows, even though it only has a second, it knows exactly what what balance, timing, swing, distribution of weight, everything to hit that ball.
Exactly. Yeah.
So a fastball hitter is a neurological athlete.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And so are these guys. They're neurological athletes. They can't tell you exactly what it was that made them see a jab any more than the fastball hitter can tell you this. Well, I saw his shoulder moving this way and I saw his elbow flare up. It's just a pattern that the neurology recognizes. Same thing. And if nobody's throwing calf kicks for 8 or 10 years in the gym, you just don't have that pattern. Right? It's just not something that you're seeing as much. But now that shit that's been going on for years. And before anybody was, Chandler in 2017 lost his title to just had it. A very, very good fighter whose name is escaping me. Very common. I have a
can help you. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Oh, I almost had it again. And this is very typical with me and names. I can tell you that he also got a go-go plata. I can tell you how he set up the go-go plata like 2 fights later. Brent Primus.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Brent Primus smashed Chandler's like 2017. It was in Chicago, I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure. Or Chandler lost to Pitbull in Chicago. I was there. Yeah. Chandler's a friend, and I was there as part of his team. He wins a lot, and he wins spectacular, but all good fighters also lose. And I was present at an after party when he lost in Chicago because that's his hometown. So maybe it was that one, although maybe that was in Europe, actually. I think it was in Europe. But so smashing the leg. John Kavanagh was cage side. Like, all of these guys have been seeing this for a long time. Right. So now when you go to throw a calf kick, that the body pattern, the distribution of weight, whatever's imprinted in my mind, I can throw a right hand and it's risky now for you.
Right.
It's risky because you might break your leg, because I might change my weight distribution, break your leg. I might counter you the second you throw it. It's super risky.
Right.
It's always been risky. It was just less familiar. So that risk had lowered a little bit, and now it's back to its regular riskiness. So it'll go away for a while, and then it'll come back again because this is how fighting works. Exactly. And all art works and fashion and music, and it's just how it works.
These discoveries and rediscoveries, right? But you touched on that, and I do want to switch gears a little because onto music. I love your music. I'm a big fan.
Thanks, man.
Dude, I'm a big fan. I feel like there's a couple songs I for sure like, but and I want to I want to urge everybody to go out and listen to it, kind of investigate and kind of, your catalog on their own. But man, if I'm going to kind of try to do my best to self-describe, you're definitely kind of metalish. You're not heavy, but you're metal. Nope. You guys are really, it's almost like Motley Crue, but you could play better, like some Quiet Riot. Like, I feel like awesome, dude. Like we
liked catchy things.
Yeah, great hooks, man.
Yeah. Like Cheap Trick.
Perfect.
Cheap Trick, right? Like the Cars. That kind of stuff that we liked. And then we also liked putting on a show. We also liked dirty guitar. T-Rex. Right? If you early Bowie, elements of Iggy Pop. But then with a kind of a modern production. So we never got part of the real, it's a tricky one. It's a really tricky one. When you look back honestly, you were like, I'm proud of it. Like there are times in your life where you're like, holy fuck, I made a record with Bob Ezrin. Bob Ezrin produced Pink Floyd The Wall. You know what I mean? Like, holy shit, that's amazing. Like, or I haven't heard my music literally for sure for 5 or 6 years because I have CDs of it, but I don't, they're not even on Spotify or whatever. People can find it on YouTube. There's 6 or 8 or 10. Yeah. There were probably only 10,000 of each record, maybe 15,000 sold. So there's some online somewhere, but I haven't heard it for years. But when I hear it, I'm like, wow, we worked really fucking hard on that.
Yeah.
We worked on our craft in many, many ways. I was driven to, learn to kind of be more poetic, which I always kind of liked language. And that's a big part of what I do now. I would really like performing. I would do high jumping kicks and stuff. When I really looked back at it, when I went to fight, was I realized that the most important roots, which was for me, was become a better singer. Really? Like take lessons, warm up, train your voice. Like that aspect I overlooked, or I hid behind. Yeah, but I can do high flying kicks. We were known for our shows. I was a great entertainer, at least according to the audience that we had. Right. I learned to write lyrics that mattered. I was driven. I was organized, but I didn't focus it on just the quality of the singing.
Oh, but Rob,
so when I went to
being really hard on yourself, man, like so sick of you. Awesome song.
Well,
like,
thanks, man. Thank you.
Really
but that it's truthful. I worked really hard to make them to be able to do it in the studio, but even live, I wasn't as good as I should have been or could have been. And I know how. And this is where when I went to fight, it was like, I don't have a nickname. I don't have a fancy walkout. I don't have a fancy outfit. I don't talk shit. I don't be flashy. I'm going to focus it entirely on the quality of my fighting, which got me further than it would have. I started fighting late, but it was the lessons of understanding how I had tried to avoid my weakness, which was the actual root fundamentals of that aspect of the craft. And like, thank you for the kind words. And I do think when you hear the records that I did the job in the studio to make something that worked, but then live, 5 nights a week, 6 nights a week, 4 nights a week, for weeks at a time, I just wasn't a good enough singer by the standards of what I could. So that was an area I could have done better. Yeah. And I should have, but the lesson of that I carry with me forever. Now, if there's something that needs to be improved, I don't avoid it and say, yeah, but look how good I am at this. Yeah, but look, I can do this thing. Yeah, but look, I go and I look at it face on, and I try to look at it face on. But it's an interesting one. I also learned a lot from that. So we actually had a very big audience of real people, real human beings. We had like a website at the time that had a massive board where people chatted on it, like and crossed over and connected to like Suicide Girls and all of these particular sort of punk rock sites and stuff. So we had a very big actual audience of human beings. And then when we went and played, we played to a ton of people. And yet, rather than value that for what it was enough, I kept focusing on how do we get a record deal? How do we get a record deal in America? How do we make a demo tape? How do we like go showcase for these people? And when I later was in this field that I'm in now it's a different time too. I spent a little time in the UFC's ecosystem where it's like, email this guy, beg for this role on this thing, see if they'll let you do the thing, bend over backwards, try to schmooze the producer, try to schmooze the executives, try to like beg. And I thought, what the fuck am I doing? I've been down this road, make the best work humanly possible, find an audience that likes it, give value to that audience, and all else ignore it. And I learned that from doing what I now think is the wrong thing, although it's not wrong because I learned a lot from it in music, where now nobody is more important than the audience. Nobody is more important than I make a thing and I give it to somebody who might find it interesting. I share an idea and I share it with an audience. And today you can have 250,000 people who will watch listen to your podcast, buy your bracelet, buy your art, learn from you. If you teach about how to write plays, whatever the fuck you do, you don't need, the NFL, or you don't need Sony records, or you literally, and it sounds easy now because I got, 250,000 people that follow me, but I started at zero. I had zero. You start at zero. And now I value it way more. Now I'm not figuring out I don't need, and I love working for Bellator and I love covering the UFC. I cover it on television in Canada, but I'm not begging for them to let me. There was a period where where it was blurry. I was like, come on, Dana White, let me use your fucking video. It's not Dana. I know Dana. He's a good dude. He likes my work.
Sure.
It's just some business guys that you're in.
Exactly.
Now you're in a cycle trying to convince a business guy who's motivated by something else to let you have some silly video to make on your goofy, in his mind, your goofy little platform or whatever, you know, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, why am I begging some executive to do something that I don't need them for?
Yeah.
I need to make art with passion, trying to make it in as meaningful a way as possible. And I need to find or earn people who will like it. That's
Right.
all you need now.
Right.
And you can make a very good living with using that. And I learned that through being in the music business. I retrospectively look back at it and see it as all this trying to get a record deal, all this trying to make sure you could open for whomever and have somebody, you know, find just their a publicist and all this kind of shit. None of that matters.
Mm-hmm.
Every minute you spend on that is a minute you're not spending on making your art better.
Right.
Every minute, and that lesson was very powerful for me, and I'm very thankful for all those time in music. But there's a lot of stuff I bring over. I directed music videos, so now when I make my videos, there's elements of that experience in it. You know, I wrote lyrics when I'm going and trying to find just the right language to describe something. That came from the 5,000 or 10,000 hours of that. So all of, you know, and a big part of the way I like to show people fighting and say, hey, look how cool this is from the perspective of art, music and painting and writing and lyrics and poetry and photography. And so having been an artist and you know, coming up through being an artist helped that, you know, it's all connected for me.
Do you consider yourself just like just an artist, or do you consider yourself a musician or a martial artist, or is it just I'm an artist?
Sometimes I think that I'm an artist. This is what I do. But if somebody asks me what I do, and I feel good and I feel proud, and, you know, in those moments you feel like your life is good and you're having a good day, and you know that you believe you're doing something meaningful. There are times where I'll say, when somebody says, what do you do? And I'll say, I'm a practicing martial artist. And when I say that, the idea that I make my living by being a martial artist is just like 13-year-old Robin would have just fucking lost his mind at that idea. Like he just would have shit his pants and laughed and cried, and just like the idea that you know, I'm a martial artist and I pay my mortgage and travel and life and you know, all those things by being a martial artist. And of course, these days you also have to to share things the way I do. You have to write and be a visual artist and edit and these things too. But to me, that's all an extension of the same thing.
Yeah. That's an awesome answer, man. It's an awesome answer. I know we're coming on time. Let me ask this one more thing. Now, I don't ask everybody this because it's backfired on me a few times, but I feel super confident here. You're super cerebral. So do you have, like, you know, kind of a catch-all, a book or somebody, a TED Talk, anything that you would say, if you could offer anybody else, go read this, go listen to this. This thing had an impact on me, or something you would just recommend?
Yeah. There's a few, actually, and I've often thought about how reading or consuming these things in different orders would actually affect how you view them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the book that really, and I think it was when I read it too, Mastery by Robert Greene. And it basically, it looks at a you know, actually Freddie Roach is in it. So there is a little, you know, he's looking at masters, people who have mastered what they do and what they have in common, and a little bit about sort of storytelling, you know. What's his name? The theory of Charles Darwin is in there, and all of the, and you know, to see the process, and because of when I read it, there were aspects of it where I was like, hey, I do that. Hey, I do that. Maybe I'm on the road. Maybe I'm somewhere on the road. Like, because a lot of what they have in common is sort of interdisciplinary thinking. That over time, you know, say you study climbing, You'll also want to study texture, and you may want to study fabric, and you may want to study, and you will want to study breathing, and you may study geology. And all of those things together will make you, it will help you achieve mastery as a climber. And of course, you'll study how the body moves and stuff. And I think but I also think that that's driven by curiosity. There was a book on focus that I read where literally I started to look at it and I was just like, these two fighters are engaged in a process right now. Mm-hmm. And we'll say the guy loses focus. Oh my God, he lost focus. Okay, what is that? Right. What's that really? Right. Okay. So I went down a long rabbit hole about focus, that it can be, it can be narrowed, it can be wide. There's internal focus, external focus, executive focus, where you're focusing on focusing, and then you start to read and really get that in your skin. So that I like to do a lot, but there's a few other books that have been really key for me. One recently, and when I say recently, like in the last 5 years, sure. It's called Deep Work by Cal Newport.
I love this.
And I think it's really important because when he wrote it, and he's got another one called So Good They Can't Ignore You, which is really interesting. It sounds a little more like business motivational-ish than I think it really is, but he wrote that one first. But Deep Work, when he wrote it, he was of the opinion that since everybody's doing what you would call shallow work, quick tweets and whatever, that anything scarce is valuable, and that's true, right? Mm-hmm. Scarcity has inherent value. So if everybody's doing quick, shallow work, and if you could do deeper, more time-consuming, more focus-rich type of work, that will be valuable for you. When he wrote it, he felt very strongly about that. Now I think the key is both. So figuring out how to be able to get into moment, and so that also took me down a road to focus. There's another book called The One Thing. I think it might be here. No, it's not here. The One Thing. I forget the author's name, but he sent it to me because I talked about it on a podcast once. It's very. Again, it's sort of process oriented, like Deep Work, where the idea is you and I are talking right now, but I have to text my wife. Yeah. And then I'm also lining up, my mic for a thing I got to do later. That isn't multitasking. Yeah. That's 3 tasks, each one that requires me to engage, stop, re-engage, do, disengage, stop, re-engage, do. And that being able to fully focus on one thing, and even to be able to break up your day into how you focus. And there's a very simple route to it. Mm-hmm. And it's a question that you keep asking yourself. What is the one thing, and I don't have it exact, but what is the one thing such that by doing it renders all other things less important?
Love it. Prioritization. Right?
Yeah. And you're like, wow, okay. And so I happened to be reading that, and my friend David Mullins sent it to me because he could see I was pretty, disorganized in my thinking, and I still am. So I've needed to purposefully read books like Deep Work and The One Thing. But he sent me that book, and it was right around the time where I actually worked for a 24-hour television channel. It was called the Fight Network. It still exists. Wow. And just overnight, and so all day long, and it was a really important part of my sort of development of what I do too, because literally some days we would being on CNN or the Food Network, or what, it was 24 hours of fighting, and in between them we'd be on TV talking about fighting. And there would be times we would and we had sort of a small UFC partnership. There would be time we'd wrap up a UFC show, and then the press, and it would end at 12:05, and they go, okay. And my friend Glenn was the producer. He'd say, okay, that's a Canadian saying, okay, guys, rag the puck until the press conference, right? It's sort of a hockey sports television saying, rag the puck or whatever. So we would just sit there, talk for 7 minutes about Jorge Masvidal, and they go, okay, commercial, and come on, and they'd go, okay, guys, sorry, we're hearing that the press conference is 58 minits away, so you guys are going to be doing a lot. And my one buddy would be getting upset, and I'd be like, all right, let's see what the fuck we can do for 58 minutes of live television. Yeah. So it was great. And there was a lot of great things about it. And in fact, that was where I first created my breakdowns. There was no such thing in fighting. And I say that humbly.
It's true.
There was Jack Slack, who had photos of fighters where he would describe it. And there was one or two things that had kind of existed around the same time. A guy was called BJJ Scout, and my friend Lawrence Kenshin, who also used photos. But I just started taking stuff and then drawing, having an editor draw stuff on it and doing these breakdowns. It was 2012. And maybe somebody can go and Google fight breakdown, find, one of mine from 2011 or 2012. And maybe there's one in 2010, but I never saw it.
Oh, wow.
I never saw it. There was no such thing. It existed in other sports.
Then, to my consciousness, you were the one that brought it onto the zeitgeist. For
sure.
sure.
Dan and John, Dan Hardy and John Gooden, they came in within about 2 years of me doing it, and then many others did. Maybe there was somebody else. Like I'm not saying I was the only one, but at the time I'd never seen it. So we created that there with the team there, and then it became. So once that it literally overnight, my wife was traveling. She's in musical theater. We were in San Diego. I woke up in the morning and some of my best friends were texting me, bro, I got fired. It's been great working with you. And my one friend did that. And I was like, oh my God, John's been fired. And then 2 others did. And then I'm like, wait a second, am I fired?
Yeah.
And I said to my wife, I'm like, fuck, they're laying off people at Fight Network. And I texted one of the executives and I was like, hey man, am I okay? And he was like, call me. I was like, fuck.
Oh, no.
So they shut down the entire department that created martial arts content, fighting, MMA content. The whole department was gone overnight. And I was like, and by this point I'd made breakdowns now for the UFC. I'd made, a couple hundreds anyways. And to do them, I had one editor that I didn't know how to never edited anything in my life, never downloaded a video ever in my life. I had an editor that edited sitting with me. I'd give him time codes, he'd edit, and we'd cut it down. Then I had a graphics guy who would build zooms and arrows and whatever. He was great and did amazing, cool things. I had a lighting guy. We had 2 cameramen. We had an editor in the studio and a producer and a sound guy. So it was like 8 people in a studio. Right. And now that was gone. And this was my thing. This is what I loved. Yeah. And I was like, what the fuck? So I started figuring out, was there some other job I could get? Is there some other studio I could find? Is there maybe somebody who could pay to give me a studio? Because I just got to do this.
Yeah.
And there was, I found I had a job in Russia here, and I had a commentary job in China. Actually, it was pretty cool. And I had a few small, a company in Korea sent me out to make content for them. So I had work. Started my YouTube channel the next day, literally within 24 hours. Right. And a couple of months later, I was like, okay, how am I going to do this? And I bought an iPad. And within and I went on and I was like, so how do I found a video that I wanted to break down. And I was like, how do I do this? And so I went on YouTube and I put in, how do you take a video off YouTube? And a 9-year-old girl pops up and she goes, well, click here and then do this. And then so I stumbled through it and I had a video on my thing. And I put it in, and somehow I got it into iMovie, which just comes free with every Apple product, right?
This is exactly
and then I was like,
how I started. Like
how to edit in iMovie. And a 9-year-old girl comes on, she goes, click here, do this thing. So I spent like 2 days and then I made a breakdown by myself, and I figured out I voiced it just like in the open air into my phone, and then I put it up on Instagram. And I had like 4,000 followers or whatever, which I'd earned, and I had some good fortune because when I worked at Fight Network, like Joe Rogan had me on his podcast. He's been super, like, he has done more for me than like any human has any right to ask of any friend. So I had a few people who were aware of me through that thing, but I made one, and suddenly that book, The One Thing, hit me. What one thing, by doing it will make all other things less important, or however it was. And I was like, just make these fucking things. Just make these things. This is your thing. You love doing this. This is what you wanted to do. You figured out how to do it. And I thought to myself, I'll make 1,000 of them.
Yeah.
And if I make 1,000 of them, I will get better. Eventually people will see them. Some people will like them, which will hopefully get people to want to see more of them. As that happens, I will get better at them, which will make me enjoy them more, which will make me do them faster. And so I had that book, The One Thing, and Deep Work, which helped me focus in. It was a book about how to fucking make something meaningful in a very loud world.
Yeah.
And between those two things at that time, you know, I put my head down and I just made them. And by the time I had about 600, 700, 800, and again, people like Joe shared them. So all of a sudden, maybe there was 10,000 more followers on Twitter 10 videos later. And then, you know, at 500 or 600, DAZN gave me a small job doing some work for them, doing work on Bellator. By then I'd gotten good enough that now I'm at 800 or 900, and 900 is a fuck of a lot of things to make. Yeah. Like if anyone's had 900 podcasts or made 900 anything, it's a lot. Yes. And then I started doing Bellator stuff. And by then I was pretty good. I was doing it different. I had my own voice. I had turned everything up. And then Bellator was like, hey, could you do these for us? I'm like, sure. And then it just, but really it took about 2.5 years of zeroing in on that one thing that such by doing it, it rendered all other things less important. So I did far less podcasts. I was doing podcasts on my YouTube channel, which I still love doing, but 2 hours of podcasts and posting it and working with, like, I could make 2 breakdowns or improve 1 breakdown, or like spend an hour trying to get better at just how to draw with the thing, or how to do sound or whatever. So I zeroed in on that to such a degree. And then I made 2-minute ones, 1-minute ones, 15-second ones, 5-minute ones. And I just kept doing it. And it forced me to get better. And it forced me, I would look at it and go, well, you could do this one kind of like the last one, but say kick instead of punch. Or you could be like, what did you learn different? Yeah. What does it mean? Why is that happening? Right. Be curious. If you think you know how it works, you don't. And that's true of everything. The smartest minds in the world about anything, if they're being honest, if they continue to study, they were lucky enough to live for 25 more years, they would look back at what they know today and ridicule it. So what you know today is ridiculous. So continue to elevate your knowledge. And so I just kept doing that. But that book at that time was a big, important thing for me.
Yeah, amazing. Look, I really hope people were listening closely, because there's no secret to your success. Like, we started this whole thing off by me kissing your ass and saying how talented you are. But like, without a doubt, I have learned throughout the course of this conversation, as you showed up, you did the work. And it can be, look, we can talk as simple as about, look at the content, look at that number, 900. Like, that's a very clear illustration.
Yeah. It's 1,800 now, by the way.
Yeah, which is twice that now, I'm sure. Yeah, right. Yeah. But it just, you show up, you did the work, 2.5 years of dogged persistence. Yeah. And my man, like, that's the secret to success. There it is. It's people show up.
You're right. And somewhere along the line, I came across, and I actually think it was maybe even in that book, Deep Work, I came across also this idea that encouraged me, called the craftsman's mindset. A craftsman just fucking makes the chair.
I love
over and over and over and over and over. He makes the fucking chair, right? Or he writes the song, or he like paints the thing. Like, that's what craftsmen people do.
Yeah.
Right. That's what they do. And so you look at it and you're like, am I one of those? Because if I am, I can't worry if in 3.5 months I made 14 of these and nobody watched it, because that's irrelevant. Right. The point of being a craftsman is eventually people will buy the chairs, because the first 800 chairs that you made that nobody bought got you to 801 when you were closer to a master and they cared about them. Right. And a whole fuckload of people quit at 100 or 150 or 200 or 8, or just never were in it. But you just kept making the craft, doing your craft. And eventually, and it also makes you understand everything. Skill development is not confusing. Deliberate practice with a constant study of the process to see where it can improve. Expert feedback, repeat forever.
Love it.
Do you play piano?
No.
Me neither.
Yeah.
But we could learn.
We could learn.
And we know how to learn.
Yeah.
We know exactly how to learn.
Yeah.
We will get an expert, or online it's available anyway. Then we will do deliberate practice.
Yes.
And there will be periods where it will be hard. It will be difficult. Our hands will be sore. We'll be bored, whatever. If we push through that, we'll be sitting around playing piano in a year. And we'll be playing piano in a month. We'll be playing piano in a year. And then in 5 years, we'll be fucking masters of the piano. Unless we decide that having learned the piano, that understanding of the language of music, we actually take that over to jujitsu. Still, we never went further with the piano, but learning the piano and how the notes work together and how it flows and how learning happens helped our jujitsu or our painting or our writing or building fucking chairs, right? It's all just like, if it's, and people, this one sounds real, almost like, what's the word? Flippant, but it's why you're supposed to do shit you like, right? And this another route that I always think of. Doesn't matter what it is you do. Somebody might say, if you can go be a school teacher, you only got to go to school for 3 years, you get the summers off. Still going to have to work your ass off. It's going to be super hard. Right. Whatever you are hoping in 2021 and 2024 to be successful at, anything will require an insane amount of hard work.
Yes.
The only thing I work hard at is should I like.
Yes. Yes.
It's the only thing I work hard at. So I have to do stuff I like, or I would be penniless, but also I would be unfulfilled. So those two things work together more conjunction than we were taught when we were in grade 7 and people said, get this education, get that diploma and go do that thing. That's not the way anymore. The way is, you get a part-time job while you build the thing up that you really want to do, and then keep. And if in 6 years you're only a little bit better, are you down for 6 more? Because you will be a lot better in 6 years.
Right.
Along the way, there's going to be shit. Like you're going to be like, okay, but in 6 years, nobody will watch YouTube anymore or Instagram. Okay, well, we better figure out what they will be watching and figure out how to take what we're doing and bring it in meaningful ways to that. Right. Maybe it'll be in 3 dimensions or in 4 dimensions, or it'll be, what's the word, enhanced reality or whatever. Well, we better figure that shit out. If it's meaningful enough that I want to talk about martial arts all the time, I better figure out how people are going to be able to hear about martial arts in 3 years. It's just all part of it.
We got to move with it. Yeah. Awesome, Robin. This is just such an amazing conversation. I'm going to have a million takeaways from this. I'm going to read each one of these books. I can't thank you again. Yeah, enough.
Message me and tell me your thoughts on them. Just
100%. I will. Definitely. I'm going to order them today from Amazon. Any last kind of, well, let me ask this real quick. Where can folks reach you? What's the best place to reach you?
So I try, and I'm still at like 99.99%. I try to make all sort of my breakdowns and analysis videos at free, or as close to free as possible. And, there are ways to do that where somebody else will pay. Like companies will pay me to be able to give it away. So I try to make sure everything's free on YouTube, Instagram. Instagram is at Robinblackmartialarts. YouTube is youtube.com/RobinBlack. Twitter, Robinblack MMA. I don't like, somehow MMA is not cool to me right now. Martial arts is more cool, but that's my Twitter handle. I'm trying to figure out how to make something that is still meaningful and has depth on TikTok, which I think is Robin Black Bink. So I've been trying to figure out how to be able to take something that it's not going to work right away. I'm also not just going to dance and
there's a
say Bink. You got to do it in a way that will fit into the environment you're doing it, but still meaningful to you and still matters to you and you're still proud of. But I'm trying to do stuff on TikTok. I'll be doing this weekend, depending when people see this, I'll be doing martial arts analysis for Jorge Masvidal's Game Bred MMA, which is bare knuckle MMA. So I'm getting on a plane in a couple of days to go do that. And a lot of Bellator stuff. I love Bellator, and so Bellator Social. A lot of my stuff ends up on Bellator Social. But yeah, for now, I just basically go in and analyze martial arts every day and try to find something that brings value or meaning or is interesting, and then share what I find and do it free, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, never stop, man. Because as one of the beneficiaries of that, I'm telling you, your breakdowns are awesome. I'm growing from them. I'm learning from them, and I'm entertained. So it's like trifecta.
Sweet. Yeah, sweet. You and I are going to do this again in 5 or 6 weeks, and you can tell me about those books.
I love it. Absolutely. I'll commit. I'll put a dent in both of them at least.
Sweet. Love it.
Thank you again. This is True Story of John Gibson. Today's guest is Robin Black. Thanks,
Enjoy the hostilities, my friends.
See you, buddy.